Okay. Best regards to all who are participating this second session of the Barents Indigenous People Third Summit online. And first of all, I want to introduce Sandra Maria West. She's the director of the Riddu Festival. So to speak, you have the stage, Sandra. Legbor.
Ollogiitu. Rahkis ustipat, daragie druzia, dear friends. I bring you the warmest greetings to the Barents Indigenous People Summit on behalf of Riddu Festivala. Riddu celebrates 30 years this year because in 1991, local Sami youth started this festival because they wanted to create a sense of pride about Sami culture for future generations. And Riddu has had a special focus on indigenous cooperation and cultural exchange in the Barents area, which has been an important work for us for many years. And many of you have visited Riddu in the past. I am very sad that we can't invite our indigenous brothers, sisters, and siblings for this year's Riddu, because even though we are going through with the festival this summer, it will sadly be limited for only Samis on the Norwegian side. I think this pandemic has really shown us how important indigenous meeting places are, how much we need each other's support and inspiration to keep on the fight for our arts, our culture, and languages. Most of us, we are minorities in our daily lives. So to have a meeting place that is dedicated to our experiences as indigenous peoples, where our stories and songs take center stage, is a true vitamin injection and a sense of freedom. But I do really hope that the circumstances with closed borders will change for the better soon, so that we all can meet again physically. And just remember that you are not forgotten. We do really miss you in Riddu. Thank you and good luck for the rest of the summit.
Music is often something that binds people together, and this is quite important in the Barents region. And I want to introduce a musician that have this expression, and allow me to introduce Viktor Bomstad. Legeborre.
Buot Dan Boddu, Jeris våra etnamis muhtuain kalkapokti vatsittavid kaupokis. Jeris våra etnamis muhtuavoin kalkapoktit vatsittavid kaupokis.
Yes, thank you, Viktor, for your musical voyage. And now we continue with the program, and the next speaker on the list is Aili Keskitalo. She's the president of the Sami Parliament on the Norwegian side, but also have been involved in this UNESCO governing body concerning the language year 1 year ago. Legaborre, Aili.
Vuorit Appa ja veljat. Dear allies and speakers of the indigenous languages in the Barents region. I sincerely thank the organizers for offering this opportunity to discuss indigenous peoples' languages in the context of the Barents cooperation. We, the indigenous peoples of the world, have a lot in common, even if we live under very different circumstances. This is true also in the Barents region and means that we can learn from each other and inspire each other. The indigenous peoples' languages in the Barents region, like the Sami languages, cross both state and regional borders. If we could work together more effectively, our language's future would be much brighter. I have represented the indigenous peoples of the Arctic region, the Sami and the Inuit, in the International Steering Committee for the International Year for Indigenous Languages in 2019. I was also co-chair of the steering committee. I am now a part of the global task force for the International Decade, together with, among other, Lars Miguel Utsi, who we will hear from later today. I would like to start with sharing some words written by the Sami writer Kerttu Vuolab on the treasure of the mother tongue. All children have a mother tongue. We human beings started to learn our mother tongue before we were born. The mother tongue is a chain that binds us to our history. Each one of us is a ring in the chain of generations, a ring in our own mother tongue. And if any ring grows weak, the whole chain will be weak. Every generation has to make sure that their ring is strong enough to add the next ring onto the chain. Our personal duty is to transfer the mother tongue to the next generation. By passing on our language, the mother tongue, to the next generation, we ourselves guarantee that life itself will continue into the future. I think these words capture both the deeply personal perspectives of language choice and language use, but also the generational and societal perspectives. I would like to think that we could all agree on this ideal, that the natural transfer of language within the family is essential and should happen with some societal support. At the same time, we all know that this ideal is far from reality for many Indigenous families. Loss of land, harsh assimilation policies, displacement, lack of cultural continuity, and other aspects of colonial policies and practices have left our languages vulnerable. In Sapmi, in some areas, the language has shifted to the majority language for generations already. To reverse that language shift requires radical decisions by the family and considerable societal and institutional support. Also in the Barents region, the future of indigenous languages first and foremost depends on each generation ensuring that the next generation is allowed to use the language, developing the language for current and future needs. The educational system is important to language preservation, but if the language is no longer used at home or in the community, then it's difficult to preserve it as a living language. If we can keep the language chain strong and the school use the language in new contexts, then there is a strong basis for future linguistic and cultural challenges. What are the future challenges on our languages will meet? There are some global trends that are affecting all of humanity. Globalization, climate and environmental change, urbanization, and digitalization. These megatrends will affect Indigenous peoples' languages. Globalization is bringing the world economy to our communities. Climate change is affecting our livelihoods. Urbanization is moving our people from the traditional communities where we use our languages into cities where we might not. Lastly, digitalization might make our languages irrelevant if they are left behind in the great digital leap the world is facing. The pandemic situation has really underlined the importance of access to internet and the possibility of using our languages digitally. For some of us, it's a question of connectivity. Others need access to keyboards and dictionaries in their languages. This is important, but we should have greater ambitions for our languages. The indigenous languages of the Barents region should be able to have the same benefits of the technological possibilities that the majority languages in the states we live in. We need spell checks, we need automatic translation, speech to text and text to speech, educational programs, and media content in our languages. This is why the Sami priorities during the 2019 language year was cross-border language cooperation and language technology. I believe that we need to follow up on these priorities also when approaching the Indigenous Language Decade. I look forward to those two subjects being highlighted by other speakers later today. Both within Sápmi and at an international level, we are now preparing for the decade. UNESCO has arranged an online review and regional consultations on the Global Action Plan. And the Global Action Plan will be finalized this summer. UNESCO also recommends regional and national level action plans. And we are considering the possibility of a Sami action plan. So far, we are in the process of deciding on a topic of a joint Sami flagship project for the decade. I urge you to consider how you and your organization could contribute to the language decade. Nobody will do it for us. We have to grab the possibility and make the most of it. Reach out to others, try to assess strategies and action plans for possibilities. Make your own. Connect with the National UNESCO Commission for the state you live in and ask them how they can assist you. Ask the authorities in your region or your state what plans they have made for the decade. Make people know, and together we can build momentum for a decade of Indigenous peoples' languages.
Kiihto. Thank you, Aili, for your constructive and optimistic approach to language preservation in the Barents region. And I really need this in this very in this work. So to use your words, the next in the chain or the next speaker is Roman Yakolev. He's a Sami Kildin musician, and he's going to talk about the situation of one of the smallest dialects of the languages in the Sami territory. Roman, you have the floor.
Здравствуйте.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present something for this event. And I would like to talk about the Kildin Sami language in Murmansk region. In order to understand the situation of the language, you first need to have a historical tour and to see how it has developed. In 1920s, our country has adopted active measures to create written languages for those native groups or for ethnic groups that did not have their own alphabets. And we have elaborated the common alphabet that was based on Latin alphabet. And the plan was to translate 30 languages or to create script for those languages that they didn't have any. Comprehensive work has been done to put those things into the Latin script. But in 1930, there was a ban on using this alphabet, and all the creators were shot. And in 1930s, there was a wave of repression in Kola Peninsula, and over 10% of the male Sami population were killed. Then there was Second World War, 1940s, and the first wave of movement of moving Sami from their native places to other places. So people were forced to so-called compact dwellings. In 1950s, the language researchers also stopped, and then 60s, it was a collectivization, and there was another wave of moving, and only in 1970s, this interest to Sami, Kildin Sami language, reconvened, and kept the joined the work. In 1980s, there was another researcher who joined the work, and the first dictionary was created. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, all research work has stopped. In 1990s, Kildin Sami was forgotten as a phenomenon, and in 2000s, in this century, the Kildin Sami languages was an object of interest of Elisabeth Scheller and Michael Rissler, foreign researchers. What do we have today with the Kildin Sami language today? We do not have it at school. We have some private courses, and we have some internet courses on Kildin Sami language. And what is the main challenge there? We do not have an adopted alphabet. Even though it was adopted during the Soviet Union, the government's position of the government today claims that there is no script, no alphabet. We have different deviations and options, but there are no methodological system, and the grammar also has errors and mistakes. What is my work? Unfortunately, I'm the only person who was studying this language in the university, and this started my interest for the Kildin Sami language. I took the dictionary that was made by my grandfather, Yakovlev, and tried to conjugate verbs and some nouns. I digitalized the dictionary to the computer software. I programmed it to change to change the word forms of the verbs. For example, I can change one word to different forms with suffixes and prefixes by software. And I also succeeded to do the same with the nouns. The problem is that Kildin Sami language differs from the Northern Sami is that the combination of sounds of consonants and vocals are very frequent and very different. So when I make different forms of the words, I have tried to analyze and describe the system of switching sounds. Now 300,000 different options, and now my project is with adjectives, and on the way there I'm describing grammar as comprehensively as I can, and this work has been done. I also created a dictionary for orthographic dictionary. I can translate from Kildi to Russian, Russian to Kildi. My main task now today is that this grammar must be disseminated, taught to people. I cannot just place it in the internet. I need a database, I need a website where it can be placed. This is it so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman, for your presentation of the dramatic history of the Kola Peninsula, but also the situation in Russia. As you said, you are working hard to improve the situation of the Sami language, the Kildin dialect, and your contribution shows that there are possible means and ways to preserve a language, and even and this is also important in the connection with the other dialects and other experience in the Kola area. Okay, thank you again, Roman. Next speaker in my list is Natala Silakova. She is a member of the working group of Indigenous Peoples, and she also belongs to maybe a small language group. And they are also very special because they are using the Latin script in their language. So, Natali, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to see you all. I would like to start my speech with the Russian legislation. The obligation of the state is to protect the cultural identity of peoples and ethnicities in Russia, as stated in the Constitution of the Russian Federation. The legislation of the Russian Federation contains norms that directly provide for the rights and guarantees for indigenous peoples. It's the education law and the law on languages of the peoples of the Russian Federation. Citizens of the Russian Federation have the right to receive preschool, primary, and general education in their native language, as well as the right to study their native language. The implementation of these rights is guaranteed by sufficient amount of relevant educational institutions. In Karelia, the areas of traditional residence of Väpsens are Shoksha, Sheltozera, and Rybrerka villages. In many families there, they speak native language, but there are families who do not speak Väpsen, and their children learn Väpsen language in preschool in a form of play. In our 3 kindergartens, in our 3 schools, Väpsen is taught through all the education. Since 1990, when the Institute of Karelian and Väpsen Languages was created, Väpsen has been taught at the Petrozavodsk State University. And now, 16 students at bachelor's and master's level study Väpsens at the Department of Baltic Finnish Philology in Petrozavodsk University. In addition, they also train primary school teachers. The students receive additional scholarship. Alumni works as journalists, translators, researchers, teachers, culture and education workers, both in Karelia, in the Vologda and Leningrad regions. The second edition of textbooks in Väpsen from the 1st and to 7th grades has been published in Karelia. They are included in the Federal Register of Textbooks. All textbooks include activity books. In high school, teachers use Väpsen training aids, Kotiman newspaper, Kipinya magazine, and their own material. The Minister of National and Regional Policy in Karelia supports publishing Väpsen books like fairy tales, short stories, novels, which are also used for educational purposes. Every second year, the Väpsen Fairy Tale Festival is held in Rybreka, and the Pajokeraine Festival in Sheltozera. And both school children, but also preschool children from Karelia, Vologda, and Leningrad regions come to the festivals. And in 2018, Mrs. Chirkova established a conversational club where Väpsens from Petrozavodsk, Vologda, and Leningrad come and chat, and expats can also participate online. We are also pleased to see that not only Russians, but also citizens of Italy and France show interest in Väpsen. They also log in for online meetings and speak Väpsen quite well. The Resource Language Media Center for Karelians, Väpsens, and Finns opened in October 2018 in Petrozavodsk. And the Ministry of National and Regional Policy supports this media center, whose objective is to improve and expand the possibilities of using and developing the Karelian, Väpsen, and Finnish languages. The media center is situated in Periodica Publishing House, which has a unique experience in the preservation and development of the Karelian and Väpsen languages. The Media Center hosts training seminars, series of short lectures on the language, culture, and traditions, various masterclasses, workshops for the development in writing tradition in Karelian and Vepsen, free courses of Vepsen, Karelian, and Finnish languages are held on an ongoing basis, and this is a great opportunity to maintain or start learning the native language from scratch. Anyone can come to the courses. And with the support of our ministry and the Federal Agency for Ethnic Affairs and the Presidential Grants Fund, opened Vepsen Ethnic Center Vertin. It was opened in 2019, and in 2020 several projects were implemented. One of them was aimed at children and youth from the 3 schools of Prionergia, and one school in Petrozavodsk, and the students of Vepsen language from Petrozavodsk University. So the youth attended master classes in video filming, sound recording, writing articles, reading, reciting texts in the native language, video and audio editing programs. There also were master classes in filmmaking in Vepsen, recording of audio books in Vepsen. There were professional musicians who held classes in singing and playing musical instruments. There were classes for the first skills of writing poetry in native language. And we also had a master class in painting. And since, because of the pandemic, we had to organize online online masterclass in painting for children. So they just logged in and had a lesson in painting. In 2020, we launched the first stage of development of Kalarand Ethnic Park. The first stage of the project was reconstruction of Vepsen Yard. The facade of the pavilion was finished. The facade of the pavilion was finished with shingles that were used in construction of traditional Vepsen houses. Today in Ribrika, you can see the old saunas with the shingles-covered roofs. So we made the decision to maintain this building tradition and preserve it for the future generations. Several films with children plays and Vepsen folk choir also have been made. Now we are preparing for the Kalarand festival and implementing the second stage of building of the ethnic park Kalarand. As of today, the implementation of the first stage at the presidential grant has begun. This stage includes masterclasses and films in Vepsen language with Russian subtitles. Students from Vepsen schools in Prionergia and residents of the Vepsen villages will make these films. They keep the traditions and culture and speak their native language and want to show their knowledge and skills with the younger generation. The project's objective is to preserve the unique cultural code of the Vepsen people, popularization of the Vepsen language and culture among the young generation who show interest to the traditions and customs of their ancestors. In my presentation, I can only show a part of what has been done to preserve the language. Some 20 years ago, Vepsen speech dominated, and today it is less and less common in shops, public transport, and just on the street. Times are changing, but our goal remains the same. We need to revive the Vepsen language. We believe that motivation to learn a language could be an incentive for indigenous young people when they apply for universities and colleges. But the youth prefer to speak English and Russian because of the internet content. So unfortunately, we can lose the connection with our past, with the past generations, with our grandmothers and grandfathers. And my vision of how we can promote the language at schools is, for example, to give the children to have to give an advantage to Websen youth when they apply for universities and colleges. And I think they should have a possibility not only to learn pedagogics, but also IT, technologies, medicine, law, and all the other faculties. I am very sorry. I was going to have this presentation with Natalia Karmazina, but due to some circumstances, she is not able to be present. So I would like to talk on her behalf. She wanted to tell you that in 2017, the government of Karelia was approved the concept of the language development for the period up to 2025. This development concept is a set of objectives and principles and guidelines for cultural education in Karelia. This concept was developed based on the wish of the Indigenous Peoples organizations. And now I would like to give you some figures. As per today, in Prionesia, we have 3 Websen ground primary schools, and also 1 school in Petrozavodsk, where pupils can learn the Websen. And then I can tell that students have a possibility to be educated as teachers of Websen languages, and then they can apply for some special courses when they already work as teachers. They can also specialize themselves in being Websen teachers at kindergartens, and the percentages of those who apply for these courses is quite high among the teachers. We also educate the teachers, school teachers and preschool teachers at the Petrozavodsk State University. 6 students are studying pedagogics for primary schools and native language, and 10 students study philology, Finnish literature and language, and Websen language. We also developed the languages in Karelia with the support from the state when they publish literature in Websen, and also in Russian when the Russian books are about our local history. We also publish Hodema newspaper in Russian and Websen, and some other publications. We also have textbooks in Websen. In 2019, the textbooks were approved and included in the Federal Register of Textbooks. Textbooks for grades for the 8th and 9th grades are under development. And the Federal Register also contains approximate school plans for secondary schools. I think that's all I had to say. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Lars?
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you for your review of the situation of the Websen language, but also the positive developments and the challenges ahead. Thank you again, Natalie. Now we go over to another Natalie Lasheva. She's a member of the Nenets organization called Yassavei, but she's also the director of the House of Folks and Arts in the Nes village in Nenets. Lägeborre, you have the floor, Natalie.
Good afternoon, dear friends. I'm very happy to see you. I'm very happy to work together with you. After the pandemic has come, we have learned to collaborate from different corners of our planet. Today, I would like to share with you about Nenets script and Nenets language. The written Nenets language has functioned in different practical arenas and has been reformed many times. Today, it is based on Cyrillic script. Nenets script is based on Keret language, and the previous attempt to create a written language in 1930-37 was based in Latin alphabet, and from 1937 it has turned into Cyrillic script. One of the main issues of national policy of the Russian Federation requiring special attention of state and municipal executive authorities is the preservation and development of the cultures and languages of the peoples of the north of the Russian Federation and the strengthening of their spiritual community. Education of people living in Nenets Autonomous Okrug goes according to state programs and in accordance with the current legislation for education and the adopted regional regulatory acts. In particular, they study their native languages or languages of other indigenous peoples of Russian Federation according to the laws on education, on Nenets language, on prospects of education in Nenets Autonomous Okrug, and the state program Preservation and Support of the Indigenous Peoples of the North and Nenets Autonomous Okrug. Education of people practicing a nomadic lifestyle is offered at all levels: primary, general, and professional. Preschool education in Nenets Okrug service is provided by 32 preschool education. 21 of them provide preschool education, 11 general education or secondary education. 22 of them are located in rural areas. In the current academic years, the number of children covered by this education is 3,448 children, including 708 living in rural areas. In order to ensure the availability and quality of preschool education in rural areas of the region, we have identified special conditions. 11 secondary schools implement preschool educational programs. In 2016, we introduced the regional project Nomadic Kindergarten. As part of this project, the education is organized in the field format in order to help children to develop communication skills in their native language without separating them from nomadic parents. The project is being implemented in close cooperation between executive, educational, and public authorities. In Nenets Autonomous Okrug, educational activities are carried out by 26 general educational institutions. 18 of those are located in rural areas. In this school year, we have 6 1,377 children studying at school, while 1,470 come from rural areas. In order to ensure the availability and quality of general education in rural schools in the region, we have identified special conditions. 6 schools have branches located in another settlement. 7 schools are small-scale schools, combining classes into sets. 7 schools provide secondary education. Students from the remote areas with no general education of an appropriate level may obtain general education in boarding schools, 10 of which operate in rural areas and 2 in the cities. School transport is organized at the beginning and at the end of the school year for those children as well as for the winter holidays. Children living with nomadic parents or their legal representatives have access to part-time education. With the aim of developing higher secondary education, graduates of general rural schools are provided with the opportunity to study in specialized classes in urban boarding schools in the city of Naryan-Mar. Graduates of the 11th grade or higher secondary school in rural school come to Naryan-Mar to pass the admission state exam. They also live there. Boarding schools in the remote areas of the region, school transport from remote rural areas to the city of Naryan-Mar allows children to fully realize their right for education and gives them starting opportunities equally well as for the children in the city. On average, according to regional statistics, 47% of secondary school graduates from rural areas continue their education in the higher secondary school. For urban school children, this figure is slightly higher, more than 50%. But when it comes to higher professional education, it is obtained by 67% of urban school graduates and only 40% of rural graduates. We will continue to ensure the availability and improve the quality of education for all categories of citizens in the Nenets Autonomous Okrug. In this school year, the Nenets language is being taught to 608 school children in 10 schools. 408 children of the, are from the region. The Nenets language on school curriculum in 8 schools, and it is taught to 36% of the total number of students. As a part of the extracurricular activities, the Nenets language is taught in 3 schools to 48% of students. The Nenets language is a compulsory part of the curriculum in the subject native language and literature. With a 6-day school week, 2 hours a week are allotted for the Nenets language, 1 hour for native literature. With a 5-day school week, 1 hour is allotted for the study of Nenets language and native literature, half an hour for Nenets and half an hour for native literature. 3 preschools since 2018 created pilot platforms for teaching Nenets language by immersing preschool children in the language environment by interacting with the families. In the 2020 and 2021 academic year, 95 children, or 77%, studied the Nenets language in these preschools. This activity of the pilot project is carried out by the Nenets Regional Center for Education. The registry of the Nenets Regional Center for Education names 23 teachers of Nenets language, when 10 of them have higher education, 13 professional education, and 2 teachers are receiving higher education now. In 2021, we have equipped educational organizations of the Nenets Autonomous Okrug with textbooks in the native on Nenets language for the first 4 grades of school, adding teaching materials. These textbooks are recommended for use by the state accredited educational program for primary, secondary, and higher secondary education. Today, they need to provide textbooks for grades 5 to 9 included in the federal list of textbooks. Professional schools of the Nenets Autonomous Okrug organize events aimed to preserve the culture and language of indigenous peoples. Students perform the research related to the Nenets language, actively participate in the events timed to coincide with the International Native Language Day, district competitions and promotions. They attend book exhibitions and literary events, take an active part in the events held on the day of Nenets writing. The Naryan Social and Humanitarian College in the Nenets Agrarian and Economic College introduced the native language as an educational discipline for groups. Preschool education, primary education, and husbandry operator programs. In order to preserve, study, and develop Nenets language as a part of the state program Education in the Nenets Autonomous Okrug, the following activities for students and teachers are introduced. These are interregional contest in local history and native languages, regional contest in the native language. Schools of the district take part in the events dedicated to the International Day of the Mother Language, the action Speak Nenets. Also, the regional stage of the All-Russian Festival competition Talents of the Arctic Children. As a part of an educational activity, each secondary school holds event throughout the year aimed on preservation of the native language. During the Day of the Nenets Written Language, and in 2019 we had events as a part of the International Year of Indigenous Languages. The Nenets Regional Center for Education Development carries out following activities to improve the professional competence of teachers of the Nenets language. Refresher course for teachers of the Nenets language, organizing the participation of teachers in all-Russian and international events. The first All-Russian Congress of Teachers of the Native Languages, the second All-Russian Congress of the Teachers of Indigenous Minorities in the North Siberia and Far East, All-Russian Seminar Meeting, Languages of the Indigenous Peoples of the North Siberia and the Far East, and the General Education System of the Russian Federation, State and Development Projects. All-Russian Scientific Practical Conference, Native Languages of the Peoples in Russia, the Educational System, Current State and Developmental Projects. International Seminar, Native Language in the Educational Space in a Bilingual Environment, Positive Experience and Problems. International Conference, Preservation of the Languages of the Peoples of the World and the Development of Linguistic Diversity in Cyberspace, Context, Politics, Practice. International Forum, Year of Indigenous Languages in Russia. District competitions for teachers. From 2016 to 2018, the Nenets Regional Center for Educational Development held seminars on the following topics. Topical issues of teaching the native language for teachers of native languages and native literature. Innovative forms and technologies in native language teaching. Organization of pilot sites in preschool teaching of the Nenets language. Nenets language in nomadic kindergarten. Roundtable. Result of a short-term stay of the preschool children of nomadic kindergarten in the Nenets community Kanin, as well as the seminars for teachers, roundtables within the framework of the Days of Nenets Written Language. Apart from the schools, a lot of work has been done by the workers in rural and urban cultural centers. They perform different events and measures to popularize and disseminate Nenets language and culture and their traditions. Apart from that, we have a website and a Nenets by a newspaper. Teachers in Nenets Autonomous Okrug have taken an active part in organizing regional events in order to preserve the language and traditional culture of people living in Nenets Autonomous Okrug. Thank you very much for your attention.
Som is the next. Okay, thank you, Natalie. And I think it was a very interesting presentation because language technology mixed with traditional livelihood as reindeer nomadies. So, and we can then go over to the next speaker. She's Lena Antonsson, and as you saw on the screen, she has also been involved in a research group cooperating with the Nenets on the Russian side. So, Lena Antonsson, you are also connected to the Troms University or the Arctic University of Norway. You have the stage.
Thank you, Kito. Thank you for inviting me and Trond Trosterud to this summit. And I'm an associate professor of Sami language at the UiT, the Arctic University of Norway. And both me and Trond, we belong to the Gelatechno research group. Trond is a person who has been cooperating with others on languages in Russia, but he could not participate here today. I will give you some information, and it's possible to write an email to us afterwards if you have specific questions about the Barents languages, except from the Sami languages. I have myself been working with Sami languages and to some extent with Canadian Indigenous languages. And at this map are marked languages with language models within our Gela LT infrastructure. And I'm happy now to talk about the digital leap, as Aili mentioned, and how we can make Indigenous languages able to take part of it. I'm a North Sami speaker, and language technology makes it possible to get end-user programs at my own computer for my language. An important step is to have a keyboard for my language, but also intelligent dictionaries with grammar to give me more information and help than an ordinary dictionary would do. I get spell checker, which can help me spelling correctly, machine translation, which can help others to understand what I'm writing, so I can write in Sami, for instance, in social media, and so on. And here are examples on these pictures of language technology for Indigenous languages. You see for Sami, Scott Sami, and Plains Cree, which is an Indigenous language in Canada. At the UiT, we make language technology for many languages with very few speakers and with little access to text corpuses. We don't use the mainstream technology based on statistics and machine learning, which is useful for English and other big languages with little morphology and a lot of texts. But we build manually rule-based linguistic models based on knowledge of grammar. As Roman Yakovlev mentioned earlier today. Here's an example from our Inari Sami model. There are only 450 Inari Sami speakers. Most of them are second language speakers, but still they have language technology. The noun päivi here, it means a day, is here reflected in many cases, and we can easily generate the inflections together with the grammar information with help of linguistic rules. When we have made the rules, the computer does this work for us very fast. For instance, it can give a grammatical analysis to text with 1 million words in 2-3 hours. We would need a couple of man-years doing it manually. When we have built such a grammar model for the whole language, that is quite time-consuming. Then this is the base for making all kinds of end-user programs as proofing tools, even syntactic speech. Even if the language has few speakers and few text, this is possible. So we are also making language technology for Sami, for instance, with only 20-30 speakers. It's not, if we have the documentation and the time for doing it, we can do it. This is a teamwork. To do this, we need a team of 3 kinds of expertise. The language experts, who are experts on their own language. We need an academic linguist or 2, and then we need programmers to put it all together. But the Gella LT infrastructure we have made at the university makes it easier. Less programming, because we reuse the scripts for several languages. So we can cooperate with many languages. So here we see how the practical work is done. The linguist can model a skeleton for the computational language model based on documentation, like grammar books, and the linguist also add the words from dictionaries to the model if they are available in digital form. But the work from the language experts in the language community is crucial. They know words which are not in the dictionary, and also grammar and expressions which are not in the printed grammar books. And they decide how they want the norm for the written language. So if you look at the right side of this slide, the language experts and other community members, many of them are second language speakers, also know what kind of end-user programs they want, and they check the quality of the programs. This is crucial. And if you look at the arrows here, they go both ways, because this has to be a dynamic process. Look at the blue arrows. That is our infrastructure, the Gella LT infrastructure, which we offer from the university. And it gives a connection between the work of the linguists and the language experts in building the computational model of the language. And the arrows go that from the model to the end user programs, like proofing tools, dictionary with grammar, machine translation, and the infrastructure even integrate them in the programs of Microsoft, LibreOffice, Apatium, and others, if we are allowed. The infrastructure itself is language independent. And I want to emphasize 2 things. One is that the big companies like Microsoft must let our language technology into their programs. And 2, that the language model must be owned by the speakers themselves or the speaker community. It must not be kept in a private company. This is not only a question about money, but about human resources. There are not so many speakers of our small languages, so we can afford to do this work several times. This was a general part. Now we'll have a look at the relevant languages in the Barents region. All the languages we have in our infrastructure are marked on this map, regardless of whether the language has the status of indigenous language or not. The language technology of these languages are in different levels. We have divided them into 3 categories. Alpha, there is a small lexicon of words, but the level of grammar is in an initial stage. Beta, the technology is in use, but not fully developed or still in the testing stage. And production, the green one, the technology is close to complete. Members of the language community involved in the development, and some programs are publicly released, end-user programs. And here is the list of the Barents languages in our infrastructure. We, that I mean Gella Techno and Devon groups at the university, have been involved in all the languages, but as you see, only a few of them are done only by us. We cooperate with others who know the language and have contact with the speakers. Most of the languages are at beta level. There is still a lot to do. And I will say a few words about Kildin Sami. We were hearing about Kildin Sami earlier today. And this is marked with black as experimental. It is not even at alpha level. Elisabeth Scheller has made a Kildin Sami Russian dictionary and is now working with a large Russian Kildin Sami dictionary, mostly based on Alexandra Antonova work. She's making dictionaries which are published traditionally as paper dictionaries, but at the same time she's cooperating with Gela Techno and works in a way so the manuscripts are machine readable. The computer can take the information from them. This kind of documentation and the format for it means that it is easier to build language technology based on them. So now we have only a little bit morphology, but we are ready to make more as soon as the dictionary is finished. And this is a good example for how such basic work makes it possible to build language technology for us, also for small indigenous languages. And here is our address, email address, if you want to ask more. But I will show you one more picture before I end. And this is just so we see how an intelligent dictionary I was mentioning, what I mean by that. That is, it recognizes also inflected words and can give the information of the base form and translation. So it's much more useful. You can click in text and get help when you are in the text. Thank you very much. Kiitos.
Please unmute your microphone. Lars Anders, could you please unmute your microphone? Lars Anders, could you please unmute your microphone? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't. No, I'm back in business. So we take a 15 minutes break now. And I want to also thank Lena for her contribution. And this also shows the importance that we have the full support of the scientific community. And maybe we have to add that this is not only the Arctic University of Norway, but also the Barents University of Norway. So we take a 15 minutes break and we resume 2:20 sharp, 14:20. Then we continue the session. So we take a 15 minutes break now. And this means we resume.
Mangkilamu vikan mangkita sa batsan Mangkilamu nolkon alas julkivatsan Muhtomi lohkan. Soivana muhto rovsodaha. Kehtsalan pesät, ta routas alas minu charvu. Ihkudon aina muu. Mangilämu vikan mangita sabatsan.
Yes, now we are entering the final part of this session, and we are going to discuss and listen on several statements. And we are starting with Lars Miguel Utsi. He is a member of the governing body of the Sami Parliament on the Swedish side, and language matters are a part of his portfolio. You have the floor, Mr. Utsi. Lägg på det.
Kiitos. Thank you. Spasiba. Sápmi, the Sami land, is covered by the northern parts of Norway, Sweden, and Finland, as well as in Russia, the Kola Peninsula. This geography, the political environment, and history of oppression and assimilation has created quite challenging conditions for the Sami and for our languages. Despite these challenges, we have a long history of cooperation within Sápmi. The first cross-border national gathering was held in 1917, and in 1956, the Sami Council, the umbrella organization for all Sami NGOs, was established. As indigenous rights developed, the Sami parliaments were established first in Norway in 1989, in Sweden in 1993, and in Finland in 1996. As the Iron Wall was torn down, cooperation with the Sami on the Russian side also developed. A challenge for us, the Sami, is that we are rather spread out and often in minority wherever we live. This underlines even more the need for cooperation across borders within all of Sápmi in order for us to come together and develop our society. With very different conditions in each country, we also stand before a challenge of having to find not only one solution for any given common language issue, but we have to find 4 different solutions adapted to each country we live in. Unfortunately, the Sami on the Russian side have the least possibilities to join such corporations. But we do have many good examples of cooperation within Sápmi. In the area of Ohtsiohka on the Finnish side and Dätnu on the Norwegian side, we see a cross-border cooperation between schools in language education. Such corporations have also been set up within communities on the Norwegian-Swedish border as well as the Swedish-Finnish border. We also see that our higher education institutions have strong focus on pan-Sami issues. For example, now when the Sami Alaskola, the Sami University of Applied Sciences in Kautokeino, Norway, is updating its strategic plan and is including perspectives of all of Sápmi in this process, also Sami perspectives in Russia. The Sami parliaments also cooperate on language issues. This is coordinated in the Sami Parliamentary Council, the cooperation body for the Sami parliaments. This council coordinates our international work, for example, related to the International Year of Indigenous Languages in 2019, and also the upcoming International Decade of Indigenous Languages 2022-2032, as we heard from Aili Keskitalo. One important common initiative that we have been working with for a long time now is the Sami Kielagaldu. Sami Kielagaldu is the Sami people's common Nordic cooperation body for issues regarding the Sami languages. It coordinates, strengthens, and develops the Nordic work for Sami languages. Kielagaldu works with language care and provides knowledge and resources for standardization of the Sami written languages. This is common work for any language, but with the Sami languages, which are divided by state borders, we do this work in a cooperation between the parliaments. Gillagaldu has been financed with temporary project funding from its establishment in 2013. The Sami parliaments have long been pushing for the Gillagaldu to get permanent funding, and in 2018, the three governments of Sweden, Finland, and Norway, and the three parliaments tasked a working group to examine how this could be accomplished. The working group proposed in 2020 that Gillagaldu should be placed in Norway and be co-financed by the three governments. The Sami parliaments all approved the proposal during last year, and now we're waiting for full financing from our governments in order for Gillagaldu to be established as a fully functioning body for Sami language standardization. Gillagaldu shows that the cooperation within Sami is strong, but it's a challenge to get all our governments, regional administrations on board to support us and dedicate proper efforts and resources to the benefit of our languages and language initiatives. But I do think this is possible, and cooperations such as the Barents Cooperation, where we get to interact with our governments and regional administrations in cooperation, are very important to make this possible. Kiitos. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Lars Miguel. I have only one question. You mentioned that there is a big challenge with this cross-border cooperation. You have legislation, you have financing. And as you know, there is now, at least Sweden, Finland, and Norway, they are discussing to establish a Sami convention to harmonize the policies. What do you think? What is the problem? Financing or the legislation or other problems in this cross-border context?
If we look at the Gillagaldu example, we see that one big challenge has been the different administrational cultures between our countries. How do we transfer funds, government funds from Sweden to Norway, from Finland to Norway? How does the government handle such a transfer according to their regulations? How do we set up an organization that is supposed to be established in Norway, but established in Norway, but with a board and directions from the Sami parliaments in each country? How do we set that up? And also, how do we transfer the workers that we have today, the staff working with Gillagaldu issues today? How can we transfer them to an organization in Norway in a smooth way? So we do see a lot of challenges when we have to cooperate within the Sami language community across these borders, because each country has their own administration, their regulations, and so on. So hopefully the Sami Convention will help us in smoothing these borders out so that this cooperation can be even better.
Yeah, thank you, Lars Miguel.
Thank you very much.
Now we move on, and the next speaker in my chain is Roman Yakolev, and he's going to talk about the future of the Sami language, or the Kildin dialect, or on the Russian side. Lägg på dig, Roman. You have the floor, Roman.
When it comes the future of Kildin Sami, as I can see it, I think we need to involve the youth into language learning. Probably we can write some poetry. We need to provoke their interest, because the youth doesn't show any special interest to the language. My objective, though, is to create our alphabet. I think this is my vision, my objective, and we need a good description of the grammar, though even if there will be very few people speaking the language, we can still preserve it if we can describe it. But I think Kildare Sami is quite difficult to learn because we use the Cyrillic alphabet. And when a Russian native speaker looks at these letters and recognize them, but and can't understand what the words mean, their brain just rejects learning. So I think we should use translate. And my word base is both in Cyrillic and in Latin alphabet. So, but really, my heart aches when I look at the current situation because the language is disappearing as I speak. It degrades, it deteriorates, and it's really sad. Just a minute. I would also like to add that we have very little legal support to learn the language, to teach the language. Yes, we do have an alphabet, but we also need teaching aids, materials. The Kildare Sami is taught at Herzen Institute in St. Petersburg, and the teachers there could tell me that they lack teaching aids. So this is a huge problem. Unfortunately, I cannot describe all the tragedy in 5 minutes. We need to work actively with the youth. We need to involve the youth. I think this is the only solution to revive the Kildare Sami language. Because we describe the world by the language. And when I started learning Kildare Sami myself, I started to express myself in another way. And I think it would be a huge deal for the Russian Sami. Very many who have Sami blood, they are afraid to admit it. They're afraid because they're ashamed. Because they don't speak their native language. I have thought about it very much. So I've been thinking how I can transfer the spelling from the Cyrillic into the Latin. And the older generation doesn't like this idea. They think that this can damage the language. But I see that the youth is much more interested in the language if it uses Latin letters, because it also then resembles the other Sami languages. I think we need to do this to involve the youth. And then, of course, we need some support from the state. We need some financing. Because I'm just alone. During the pandemic, I was alone sitting at home, working with the grammar, with a database. I don't understand why nobody has done this before. That's all I had to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Roman. You already earlier mentioned that this discussion about the different script, the Cyrillic and the Latin, and as you mentioned earlier, that there were plans to use the Latin script, and we can also have we have an example among the Veps. They are using the Latin script, and But that's a big challenge to go over to a new script. You mentioned that there were some discussions and there were some hesitations about to introduce this. But is that possible, or do you think it's? But you also mentioned the new technology. It could be a bridge between the languages and the grammars. Do you have any comments on that?
Технологии, конечно же, можно.
Of course, we can use the modern technologies. We need and we can apply technologies. I have already written an algorithm how we can search for syllables and to transfer the Cyrillic writing into the writing with Latin letters. Because those attempts were made in last century when the Russian wanted to use Latin alphabet to expand the communist idea to other countries. But then it was stopped by Stalin. And those attempts were also made in regards of Kildin. But I'm a musician, and of course, as for a musician, it doesn't matter if we use Cyrillic or Latin. But books are being published now, and people publish their works. They don't care about spelling. They don't like to be criticized for that. And they create their own symbols. And that creates, of course, also another spelling problem. But my vision is I would love to transfer Kildin Sami to the Latin, but according to the Russian legislation, the indigenous people's languages should be based on the Russian and Russian letters. So it's a legal problem as well. But for me, I don't see any problem with that. I was a grown-up person when I started learning Kildin Sami, but of course, some people don't agree with me. But I think it's not a problem at all.
Have you been in touch with your colleagues among the webs, because they are using the Latin script,
As far as I know, they published a dictionary back in the 60s, and then the Latin letters were used. So they actually used the right time in the 60s, right during the after Stalin's death. There was probably some period of time where everything was allowed. So they were lucky. And there is a law draft that the regions could decide themselves which alphabet to use. We will see how it will work, if it will be adopted.
Roman, for your presentation and your answers. So we can continue with this Latin script again. We are introducing Larissa Firkorova. She's chair of the Webs and Culture Association, and she maybe can continue.
Добрый день всем участникам Summit.
Good morning or good afternoon to all participants of this summit. I would like to start my PowerPoint presentation, so to show you what I have, and at the same time I will talk to you. First of all, I would like to comment on what Roman Yakovlev has said, telling that only one dictionary is made in Websyn, also only in Latin script. This is not totally true. In 1989, where the Websyn language started to have its rebirth, there was a song that was written down in Latin script, and we have also Websyn newspaper in its language. And the most important thing is that Websyn language is being taught at schools and preschools and also at the university in Petrozavodsk. Websyn language entered those educational institutions due to the initiative of the cultural community of Websyn culture. And this work is being promoted and is being popularized and being disseminated not only in Karelian Republic but also Leningrad and Vologda regions. Apart from these newspapers, we have also a children's magazine, which is published 4 times a year, published in Latin script for small children. And we have now met also the second generation of textbooks in Websyn, which are all printed in Latin script. We also print dictionaries, not only one, but also Russian Websyn, Websyn Russian, and orthographic dictionary on a lot of fiction literature. And we have a lot of mass media, or not. Okay, recently we have opened a platform where we can find all the publications in Websyn language and also read news and other native languages, and we'll be informed about all events that are happening in our territory. In this mass media center where we find ourselves today, we hold regularly different events like cultural events, masterclasses or lectures in different topics. We also have an open language course, which is open for all people who would like to learn the language from scratch. In Petrozavodsk, we have already had a conversational club that has been working for 10 years in order to improve and to facilitate to conversational skills in Websyn language. It also encompasses other regions, in the regions which can participate in our meetings, which are being held weekly online. And it has happened already for 10 years. Every year it is being strengthened by new people, new topics to discuss. This shows the popularity of both the club and the language, and the willingness which people have to study the language. New people come to our language courses every year, so the interest for the Websyn language is only increasing. I can only say that one of the positive tools to disseminate Websyn language has become documentary films. Websyn Cultural Center has filmed different aspects of traditional culture and way of life of Websyn people. In this way, we can preserve both the language and also display the different art crafts and different activities in our community. All these films are being used as didactic things in education. We also have some video recordings of language lessons for the new beginners, for those who want to start with the language. These video classes may not only teach you to read Websyn, but also teach you basic grammar and teach you different expressions and words and their use in an everyday language. These video lessons are made by not only teachers but also students and other interested parties. So the popularization of Websyn language has been supported by television and radio programs. These are being sent since 1980s. When it comes to the radio, TV programs started a bit later, but we broadcast not only in Karelia, but also around the whole world, because all our programs are being sent on internet, like online. Our experts go and collect materials in Karelia, Bogdan, Leningrad districts, and they find their dialogue partners and also contribute to accumulating experience of the accumulating language and what should I say? This is a best practices in popularization of the language. One of the important components is, of course, working with youth, young people, children. This will help us to popularize, to strengthen the language, and by involving these young people in this work. This includes also social networks like Facebook, Instagram, where we make groups, where we publish our news and tell about the language. And I would like to say that last year, our Ministry of Regional Policies in Webs and Culture supported our project focused on the Websen language and literature. And it has shown that the project has shown that children are interested in studying Websen language, and they are prepared to use the language in their everyday life. We have presented different teaching sessions where children could record both speeches, and we could have some photos using Websen language to comment. So we have a lot of plans in future as well. For example, we plan to make like a language nest, as we call it, where small children could be immersed in the language environment, being still in preschool. All the time we're trying to integrate the Websen language into a modern everyday life and give it new possibilities to live. Also together with young people, along with our children, because our children is our future, and without young people, there will be no development or no more life for the Websen language if they are not with us. So thank you to our experienced people who have really launched or established this cultural center. And thanks to everyone who supported the development, dissemination of the Websen language, which made it possible to implement all our ideas in the Websen language. Thank you very much for your attention.
And we had prepared some questions, but the problem is that you have already answered the questions that we had planned to raise. But the web situation is quite unique in that sense that you are using both scripts, both the Cyrillic and Latin, and that's quite a fantastic mixture. How do you manage? It's a very simple question. How do you manage to operate in both scripts and both languages? And I think that would be quite a good. You should have good advices to us who are living in one script. You have the floor.
Мы можем использовать.
And we move to the next speaker. Lars Anders, could you please unmute your microphone? Thank you.
Okay, we have to continue then. Next speaker is Anna Koivisto. She is a member of the Sami Parliament, but also a member of the governing board of the Sami Parliament. What about the Finnish experience on the Finnish side? Legeborre, Anne.
Kiitos. Ollu ja päivää puhkaita. Good afternoon, dear friends. And I was supposed to speak to you about our visions of the indigenous people's languages, and I will bring to this table some maybe new ideas or maybe not. So I'm Anni Koivisto, Vice President of Sami Parliament in Finland and a member of our working group of Indigenous Peoples. And it's really nice to be here and meet you all today. I myself am a speaker of Northern Sami. I'm living in Tjäväjäyri, Sevettijärvi, in a Skolt Sami environment, and I feel really privileged because I can hear two different Sami languages in my everyday life. So language is really tied to everything we do and present at all times. And in indigenous perspective, we of course have to know that the losing of the languages and all the attempts to take the languages away from us. So it can also be very hurtful. So the other side of language being present all the time is that people who have lost own language get all the time reminders of something missing. So I see that we all have to do our best to get the languages back and make sure that the environment could be a reminder of something we have instead of reminding about something we don't have. So it should also be the priority in our Barents cooperation. And of course, there are plenty of actions we need that the indigenous languages will be alive. For example, we need to make sure that there's education in our languages and on our languages, and we have to do our best that the languages are strong. But in this kind of event, which is about regional cooperation, I want to highlight that when we are taking care of areas which are important to indigenous peoples, we are also taking care of our languages, because the languages, of course, need areas to be alive. So languages are often tied to some certain areas, and languages are mirroring the culture and environment people are living in. It's really important that the areas and cultures have a chance to survive and be alive. So these areas are resources to the language work. If we have areas where languages and cultures are alive and strong, the languages and cultures can also be alive in other areas. These areas, homes of indigenous peoples, are homes to the languages as well. Language can be heard all around the world, but it has a connection to some certain place. So taking care of languages also requires that we make sure that development of these regions is taking place on the terms of indigenous peoples, and that we protect the areas from the things that are a threat to them, such as climate change. And in that, we have so much to do together. So my point is that all the time we are working for indigenous cultures or on our lands, for our lands, we are also working for our languages. So language is all the time involved in every kind of cooperation we have, and everything we do has an effect on our languages. Thank you.
Lars Anders, could you please unmute your microphone? Thank you.
Okay. Talking about Finland, because Finland has, through the history, being a country that always have been bilingual. You were once a part of Sweden, where Swedish was used, and of course Finnish. You were a part of Russia once, and then it was Finnish, Swedish, and now you are. If you look on Finland and compare that with Sweden, Finland is at the present time bilingual. Swedish and Finnish are the official language, and now is also Sami language included. And now Finland is taking over the chairmanship of the Barents Cooperation. What do you think will be the Finnish or the Finnish Sami contribution to this cooperation and to try to develop and revitalize the languages in the Barents region? What could be your and the Finnish government's input in this process during the next 2 years?
Thank you. That's a good question. In my opinion, the most important contribution to the important work of revitalizing Indigenous peoples' languages is bringing people together, like we have done today. So we have different situations, but still many same kind of problems, and we could also find some solutions together. Barents cooperation can contribute the cross-border cooperation by sharing knowledge about methods and good practices for revitalizing Indigenous languages, so we can be an inspiration for each other. Besides of sharing the ideas and knowledge, I also see it possible to have practical cooperation. And this is very important, especially in revitalizing seriously endangered Indigenous languages, like, for example, a called Sami language in Finland, Norway, and Russia. And Barents cooperation can offer channels and helps to create cross-border cooperation between the speakers of the languages. It of course means that we take language as one of the main priorities, like we have done, for example, today when we have chosen to bring this subject to this high-level event. In the future, we still need, for example, more discussion about Indigenous languages. We need to contribute to the possibilities to learn Indigenous languages and in Indigenous languages. We need to contribute to the Barents region so they promote the possibilities of the Indigenous peoples to education and use of our languages and contribute to digital development. So also Indigenous languages will benefit from that. And of course, Barents cooperation is one way to provide tools for carrying out the resolution considering the decade of Indigenous languages, which we heard about before. So to sum up the vision of Barents cooperation considering Indigenous languages, more and more cooperation, more ideas shared together, more opportunities to use our own languages, and less barriers to our language work together. Thank you.
Follow up, of course, we know that there's goodwill in the capitals of the Barents region, but what about the regional level? What is the ideas or the willingness to cooperate in issues like culture, music, but also in language revitalization? Because usually it is not on their table, but still they have a big responsibility as a big part of the Barents cooperation. Are the regions with us?
Maybe I can answer about the Finnish side. I guess the language issues are many times on the table of the regions, and many times when we read, for example, the action plans, we can see Indigenous languages on those. But the thing we have to make sure is they are really with us and really willing to also make sure that the action plan will be like it's true that they are doing this. It can't be only in the papers, but we need the regions to work with us to do the work for languages.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, because every country has, of course, their legislation about who is responsible for what. But we can conclude that the regions are with us. So with these words, we can end, and thank you, Anne, again. So we are now ahead of the program, and I want to thank on my behalf, but also on the behalf of Pere-Heikka Muotka, who due to circumstances out of his control, he couldn't participate. So once again, thank you for me and Pere-Heikka, the chair of the Barents region. And hopefully this, we are going to connect the statements, and if it's possible, we are going to put them on our website, so you can then take, if you want, to share the ideas and the thought in these documents. We will try that. So for me, it's over and out. Thank you.
Thank you, Lars Anders, for moderating in the true Barents spirit. Knowledge is one of the topics for the Norwegian chairmanship, and I think we've all gained new knowledge today. We have exchanged views and experiences, we have learned from each other, just like friends across borders in the north do. I think some of the key words from today are Indigenous people's role in combating climate change, adjusting to and understanding each other, coexistence, education, and modern solutions to preserve traditional ways and cultural heritage, and the languages. It is not easy to conduct a chairmanship through the screen, not being able to meet in person. In April 2020, the hosts of this event, together with the Norwegian Barents Secretariat and Ridu had planned a Barents event at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues in New York. This has been one of many cancelled events. We are sorry for that, but at the same time, we are grateful that we are still able to meet virtually thanks to modern technology. This technology is also valuable in supporting the preserving of indigenous languages, like we heard from Lena Antonsen today. On behalf of Norway, as chair of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council, I would like to thank our co-hosts, the Sami Digi and Västerbotten, as well as the Working Group on Indigenous Peoples, and I would like to express gratitude to all our speakers, as well as artist Inger Blix-Kvammen and our performers, Ronja and Viktor. And, of course, gratitude to the International Barents Secretariat. This summit has been a journey all over the Barents region. I believe the perspectives from the different contributors from Umeå to Naryanmar, Rovaniemi and Kautokeino has enlightened us and made us a better place to move our cooperation forward. We will publish a report from this summit before the end of June. This will be a useful document in moving forward towards the next summit in Finland in 2 years' time, where we hopefully will be able to meet in person. Thank you very much.